The Last Hope. Smoke billowed across what was once New Geneva as Captain Alina Reyes watched from the underground bunker's observation deck. The reinforced glass barely held back the toxic atmosphere that had replaced Earth's once blue skies. Behind her, the soft hum of quantum computers and urgent whispers of the remaining military command filled the cramped space that had become humanity's last refuge. "Status report," she demanded, never turning away from the view of her dying world. Commander Jackson, a man whose face had aged decades in the past year, handed her a tablet. "The Vexari have destroyed the lunar colonies. Mars goes dark in 3 days. We've lost contact with the Jupiter outposts." Alina's jaw tightened. Earth had never seen the Vexari coming. One day the skies filled with their crystalline ships, beautiful and terrible. Their ultimatum was simple: surrender or die. Humanity chose to fight. 3 months later, 8 billion people had become less than 2 billion, with the survivors huddled in underground complexes while their world burned above them. "And Project Harbinger?" she asked, finally turning to face the room of haggard officers and scientists. Dr. Katori, head of the project, stepped forward. Unlike the military personnel, her hands shook slightly, betraying the exhaustion of someone who hadn't slept more than 3 hours a night for months. "It's ready, Captain. As ready as it will ever be." A heavy silence fell over the room. Project Harbinger had consumed every remaining resource Earth could muster. While the regular military fought and died in increasingly desperate battles, the brightest minds left alive had worked on one last, impossible hope. "Show me," Alina said. The group descended through 30 levels of the bunker complex, past security checkpoints where guards stood with hollow eyes and tight grips on weapons that couldn't save them. They finally emerged into an enormous underground hangar carved directly from the bedrock beneath the Swiss Alps. And there it was, the Harbinger. Unlike the bulky military vessels that had proven so ineffective against the Vexari, this ship was sleek and obsidian black, shaped like a predatory fish. It wasn't large, barely 70 meters from bow to stern, but it represented humanity's collective genius compressed into a single deadly package. "She doesn't look like much," General Weiss remarked, his German accent thickened by fatigue. "That's by design," Dr. Katori replied, leading them toward the vessel. The Vexari detect ships primarily through mass and energy signatures. Harbinger is built on principles they've never encountered. As they approached, Alina noticed how the light seemed to bend strangely around the hull. Not reflection, not quite absorption either. Something else entirely. "Phase-shifted quantum skin," Dr. Katori explained, noticing Alina's gaze. "It exists partially outside our normal space-time. That's why it looks wrong to human eyes." Inside, the ship was even more unsettling. Instead of the usual array of control stations and crew quarters, there was a single central chamber containing what looked like a medical pod connected to a spiderweb of glowing filaments. "One pilot?" Alina asked, brow furrowed. "One pilot," Dr. Katori confirmed, "connected directly to the ship's neural interface. Every system, every weapon, every defensive measure, all extensions of the pilot's body and mind." Alina walked around the pod, examining it with growing unease. "The neural load must be enormous." "It is," Katori admitted quietly. "We've tested it with simulations. No test subject has lasted more than 8 hours before neural collapse. And we need at least 48 hours to reach the Vexari command ship," Commander Jackson added grimly. General Weiss stepped forward. "Captain Rice, you understand why you're here. You scored highest on the neural compatibility tests. Your mind can withstand the interface longer than anyone else we found." Alina stared at the pod, unable to suppress a shudder. "And what happens after 8 hours?" Dr. Katori couldn't meet her eyes. "We've developed a cocktail of neural stimulants and stabilizers. They should extend your functional time to perhaps 20 hours. And after that?" "After that," Dr. Katori said softly, "you push as far as you can. Every hour will cause increasing neural damage. By 30 hours, you'll experience hallucinations, seizures. By 40 hours, she trailed off. I'll be brain dead, Elena finished flatly. No one contradicted her. Elena turned to examine the ship again. And this is supposed to defeat an empire that crushed our entire global fleet in an afternoon. Dr. Katori brightened slightly, moving to a console. The Harbinger carries 3 revolutionary systems. First, the phase drive allows travel through a dimensional pocket. Not quite FTL, but it can cover vast distances while being virtually undetectable. Schematics flashed across the screen, showing complex equations Elena couldn't begin to understand. Second, adaptive metamaterials that can reconfigure at the molecular level, allowing the ship to absorb enemy fire and repurpose the energy. And the weapon, General Weiss pressed. Dr. Katori hesitated. We call it the entropy cascade. It accelerates time within a targeted volume of space. Anything caught in it experiences billions of years of molecular decay in seconds. The room fell silent again. Has it been tested? Elena asked. Only in simulations, Dr. Katori admitted. The power requirements are enormous. Each firing will drain most of the ship's reserves. General Weiss cleared his throat. Captain Rice, I won't order you to do this. The mission parameters. I volunteer, Elena interrupted. Everyone stared at her. I lost my husband and daughter when the Vexeri hit Buenos Aires. There's nothing left for me here except revenge. The mission briefing that followed was mercifully brief. The Lena would pilot Harbinger through Vexeri lines using the phase drive, approach their command ship, a massive structure they called the Nexus, and deploy the entropy cascade at point-blank range. The destruction of the Nexus would theoretically disrupt the Vexeri command structure long enough for Earth's remaining forces to launch a coordinated counterattack. Theoretical, untested, desperate. The words hung unspoken in the room. Launch was scheduled for 400 hours. Elena spent her remaining time in the small chamber assigned to her, looking at the only photograph she had saved. Her family at the beach, laughing, unaware that their world had less than a year left. When the time came, she wore a simple black flight suit designed to interface with the neural pod. Dr. Katori personally administered the first round of stabilizers, the needle sliding into Elena's spine with a cold bite. The first dose is mild, she explained. Each subsequent injection will be stronger, with increasing side effects. I've programmed the ship to administer them automatically. The final doses, she paused. They may keep you functioning, but they'll be unpleasant. Elena nodded, unable to speak through the sudden tightness in her throat. The remaining staff gathered to wash her board. There were no speeches, no ceremonies. Humanity had moved beyond such things in its fight for survival. General Weiss simply clasped her hand once, his grip firm. Make them pay, he said, his voice barely audible. Inside the neural pod, Elena lay back as the transparent cover sealed over her. Electrodes attached themselves to her skin, while hair-thin filaments sought the neural ports that had been surgically implanted at the base of her skull weeks earlier. The connection, when it came, tore a gasp from her throat. Suddenly, she wasn't just Elena Rice. She was the ship. She could feel the cool metal of the hull, sense the thrum of the phase drive spooling up, taste the electromagnetic signatures of the launch bay equipment. Harbinger online, she whispered, though she didn't need to speak aloud. The ship knew her thoughts before she formed them. The hangar doors above slid open, revealing a narrow shaft leading to the surface. Elena flexed what now felt like her new body, and the Harbinger rose silently into the toxic atmosphere of Earth. Above the cloud layer, the stars burned cold and clear. Elena allowed herself one moment to feel their beauty before reality reasserted itself. Her sensors detected Vexeri patrols immediately, crystalline ships glinting in the sunlight, their formations mathematically perfect as they maintained their blockade. Elena activated the phase drive. The universe seemed to fold around her, colors shifting to impossible spectrums as the Harbinger slipped sideways into the dimensional pocket. The neural load hit immediately, like an ice pick behind her eyes. But she gritted her teeth and pushed forward. 50 million kilometers vanished in minutes. When she reverted to normal space, the massive bulk of the Vexari Nexus filled her awareness. It was enormous, a floating city of crystalline spires and pulsing energy conduits arranged in a geometric pattern that somehow hurt to look at directly. Around it swarmed hundreds of warships, from nimble fighters to dreadnoughts that dwarfed anything humanity had ever built. The sight should have filled Alina with despair, but instead, a cold clarity settled over her. She was already dead. Her only purpose now was to hurt them as badly as possible before the end. Her arrival didn't go unnoticed. Alarms rippled across the Vexari fleet as sensors detected the small human vessel. Alina intercepted their communications, the ship's systems automatically translating. Unknown vessel detected. Classification: human design, unregistered configuration. Singular life form detected. No significant weapons or defense systems. Dispatch intercept squadron. Priority level: minimal. A cluster of smaller Vexari ships broke formation, approaching with casual arrogance. Alina waited, conserving energy, letting them come closer. Human vessel, power down and prepare for destruction, came the transmission. Your species' resistance ends today. Alina didn't respond. Instead, she activated the adaptive metamaterials as the first Vexari ships opened fire. Crystalline energy beams, the same weapons that had shattered Earth's defenses, lanced toward the Harbinger. When they struck, Alina felt a momentary burning sensation across her skin, but the ship's hull drank in the energy, molecular structures reconfiguring to absorb and store the attack. The Vexari ships paused, clearly confused by the lack of damage. Alina smiled grimly and returned fire, not with conventional weapons, but by redirecting their own energy back at them in a focused pulse. 3 Vexari ships shattered instantly, fragments spinning away into the void. The others scattered in sudden alarm, their perfect formation dissolving. New transmissions flooded the channels, tone shifting from dismissive to urgent. Unknown defense system, unable to penetrate. Weapons ineffective. Request immediate reinforcement. Alert the Nexus. Potential threat detected. Alina pushed forward, accelerating toward the heart of the fleet. Larger warships moved to intercept, energy weapons charging. The neural load increased as Alina forced the ship's systems to their limits, dancing between enemy vessels, absorbing fire from one to use against another. Each maneuver sent fresh daggers of pain through her skull, but she embraced it, channeling it into fury and precision. 6 hours into the mission, the first major warning flashed across her consciousness: neural degradation exceeding safety parameters. The ship automatically injected the second dose of stabilizers. Alina's vision blurred momentarily as the chemicals flooded her system, then sharpened to painful clarity. Colors became too bright, sounds too crisp, but she could feel her neurons knitting back together, buying her precious hours. By now, the Vexari had recognized the threat. A full battle group moved to engage her, 20 capital ships surrounding her in 3-dimensional space, coordinating their fire to overwhelm the Harbinger's adaptive systems. Alina knew she couldn't absorb that much energy at once. Instead, she activated the phase drive for just 2 seconds, long enough to slip between dimensions and reappear inside their formation. The maneuver cost her. Blood trickled from her nose as neural pathways overloaded. Warning indicators flashed across her consciousness, but she ignored them, focusing instead on the Nexus looming closer, just a little further, just a little longer. The Vexari commanders were properly afraid now. Their communications had lost all composure. How is one ship doing this? It's impossible. All vessels converge. Stop it at all costs. Alert the Overseer. We cannot contain this threat. Alina allowed herself a grim smile as she pushed toward her target. The Harbinger had proven its worth already. sowing confusion and fear among an enemy that had known only victory. Even if she failed, the Vexari would remember this day. The day they learned that humans weren't as easily crushed as they had believed. But she had no intention of failing. Not when she was this close. The Nexus filled her view now, its crystalline towers gleaming with cold light. At its heart, sensors detected a massive energy source, the central command node that coordinated the entire invasion. For Earth, Elena whispered, and activated the entropy cascade, turning the tide. Time seemed to slow as the entropy cascade initiated. The weapon drew power from every system aboard the Harbinger, leaving Elena feeling suddenly hollow and vulnerable. For a terrifying moment, she thought the weapon had failed. Then she saw it. A sphere of distorted space, barely visible except where it bent the light from distant stars, expanded from the Harbinger's bow. It moved deceptively slowly, growing as it approached the nearest section of the Nexus. The Vexari defenses activated instantly, energy shields flaring to life with blinding intensity. But the entropy cascade wasn't an energy weapon to be blocked or a physical projectile to be deflected. It was a localized disruption of physical laws themselves. When it touched the Vexari shields, they simply ceased to exist, not destroyed, but aged into oblivion in a fraction of a second. The cascade rolled onward, touching the outer structures of the Nexus. Elena watched in fascination and horror as gleaming crystal towers crumbled to dust. Then to nothing, billions of years of decay compressed into heartbeats. The effect spread rapidly, following energy conduits and structural pathways deeper into the massive station. The Vexari response was immediate and panicked. Ships scattered in all directions, abandoning formation and coordinated defense. Elena intercepted frantic transmissions between vessels. The Nexus is compromised. Unknown temporal weapon. All vessels withdraw to safe distance. Protect the Overseer. Transfer protocols are active. Elena allowed herself a moment of savage satisfaction. The mighty Vexari, who had slaughtered billions without remorse, were running scared from a single human ship. But her victory was short-lived. The entropy cascade had drained the Harbinger's power reserves nearly to depletion. Warning signals screamed through Elena's consciousness as multiple systems verged on failure. Worse, the neural interface was deteriorating rapidly, the strain of combat accelerating the damage to her brain. The ship automatically administered the third dose of neural stabilizers. This time, the effect was like lightning through her nervous system. Elena screamed as every nerve ending fired simultaneously, her back arching against the restraints of the neural pod. When the agony subsided, she tasted blood. She had bitten through her tongue. But her mind was clear again, sharper than ever, and filled with unnatural energy. She could feel damage spreading through her brain tissue, but it seemed distant and unimportant compared to the mission. The Nexus was severely damaged, but not destroyed. Its central core remained intact, protected by redundant systems that had isolated it from the affected sections. Already, Elena could detect emergency protocols activating, rerouting control functions, and stabilizing the station's critical infrastructure. She had wounded the beast, but it was recovering quickly. Not enough, she muttered, blood bubbling between her lips. Not nearly enough. A sudden transmission cut through the chaos, broadcast across all frequencies. The voice was unlike the others, deeper, resonating with harmonics that made Elena's teeth vibrate. Human vessel, it said, the translation struggling with the complex linguistic structures. This is the Overseer of the Vexari Dominion. Your attack was unexpected, impressive even, but ultimately futile. Elena didn't respond. Instead, she was frantically analyzing the transmission source, trying to pinpoint the Overseer's location within the damaged Nexus. Your species has shown more resilience than anticipated, the Overseer continued, a worthy data point for future conquests. In recognition of your achievement today, I offer you terms. Withdraw now, and we will allow your remaining population to live as a protected species. Continue, and we will eradicate every trace of human existence from the galaxy. There, a secure communications node buried deep within the station's core, Elena focused the Harbinger's remaining sensors on the location, confirming a massive concentration of energy and unusual quantum patterns. The Overseer wasn't just commanding the invasion. It was something more. "I have a counteroffer," Elena transmitted, her voice ragged even in the digital space. "You leave our solar system immediately, or I send you to meet whatever gods you believe in." A pause. Then laughter. A sound like crystal breaking. "Your vessel is depleted. Your weapon discharge. Your organic components failing. What possible threat could you pose now?" Elena smiled, though no one was there to see it. "You still don't understand humans, do you? We're our most dangerous when we have nothing left to lose." With that, she drove the Harbinger forward, accelerating directly toward the Nexus's damaged sections. The remaining Vexeri ships moved to intercept, but they were hampered by their own fear of approaching the areas affected by the entropy cascade. Elena pushed the phase drive beyond its safe parameters, jumping in microbursts that left reality smearing around her. Each jump sent fresh agony through her neural pathways, but she barely noticed now. The stabilizers had pushed her beyond normal human pain thresholds, into a state where she existed as pure will. Warning alerts screamed through her consciousness. "Suratkial, NURAL degradation, 78%. Estimated full completion time remaining, 42 minutes. Phase derive stability, Kilompero MyCD." She ignored them all, focusing on the gap in the Nexus's shattered hull that would allow her to penetrate to its core. Vexeri defensive fire intensified, but Elena was beyond caution now. She let the Harbinger take hits, absorbing what energy it could, and simply enduring what it couldn't. As the Nexus began to implode, tearing itself apart at the molecular level, Elena felt her own consciousness unraveling. The neural interface failed completely, releasing her mind from the ship even as her body died. Her last sensation was not of pain or fear, but of falling into light. Across the solar system, human survivors watched in awe as the Vexeri Nexus collapsed in upon itself, becoming a brilliant point of light before vanishing entirely. The effect rippled through the invasion fleet, ships suddenly losing coordination, weapons systems failing, communication networks dissolving into meaningless noise. On Earth, General Weiss stared at the tactical display in disbelief as Vexeri signatures began to vanish from the system. "She did it," Dr. Katori whispered, tears streaming down her face. "Captain Reyes actually did it." The remaining human forces didn't waste the opportunity. Emergency protocols activated worldwide, launching hidden reserves and triggering dormant defense systems. The counterattack was swift and merciless, targeting confused Vexeri vessels that no longer operated as a cohesive force. Beyond the solar system, the effect was even more profound. The Vexeri Dominion had been built around the Overseer's central intelligence, a hive mind that coordinated their expansion across 17 star systems. With its destruction, the carefully maintained order collapsed. Subjugated species that had suffered under Vexeri rule for generations suddenly found their oppressors vulnerable, confused, fighting among themselves as secondary command nodes attempted to seize control. The rebellion spread like wildfire across the sector. 3 years later, Earth was healing. The toxic clouds had begun to clear, revealing blue skies for the first time since the invasion. New cities rose from the ruins of the old, built with technology recovered from abandoned Vexeri vessels. Humanity had not only survived, but was venturing beyond its home system, establishing outposts and forging alliances with other species freed from Vexeri domination. In the center of New Geneva, where the underground bunker had once stood, a simple monument had been erected, a scale model of the Harbinger, rendered in obsidian and titanium. At its base, a single name, Captain Elena Reyes. Commander Jackson, now Admiral, stood before it on the anniversary of the Nexus's destruction. The ceremony had ended hours ago, but he remained lost in thought. "They never found any trace of her, you know," said Dr. Katori, approaching quietly to stand beside him. Age had softened her features, but her eyes remained sharp, not even wreckage from the Harbinger. "Would we recognize it if we did?" Jackson replied. "The readings we got from that final moment. The phase drive and entropy cascade creating a temporal loop. Some of the scientists still argue about what actually happened. The leading theory suggests she might have created a micro-dimensional pocket," Katori said. "A space outside normal space-time. The ship could still exist there, in some form." Jackson nodded slowly. "I prefer to think she's still out there somewhere, watching over us." The sun broke through the clouds, casting golden light across the monument. For a moment, both could have sworn they saw the model ship shimmer, as if partially phasing out of reality. "The Vexeri underestimated us," Katori said softly. "They saw our divisions, our conflicts, and fought us weak. They never understood that humans are at their strongest when facing extinction. A lesson the galaxy won't soon forget," Jackson agreed. As they turned to leave, a child approached the monument, placing a single flower at its base. She looked up at the model ship with solemn eyes. "My teacher says one person changed everything," she said to her mother. "Just one ship against all of them." "That's right," her mother replied. "And do you remember what Captain Rice proved?" The girl straightened her shoulders proudly. "That humans never give up, even when it looks impossible." "Especially then," her mother said, smiling through tears. "Especially then." High above, in the clearing sky, a star winked, just for a moment, like an eye-opening and closing. Then it was gone, leaving only the endless blue and the promise of tomorrow. Epilogue. Echoes across the stars. 5 years after the fall of the Vexeri Nexus, the ripples of Captain Alina Reyes' sacrifice continued to spread across the galaxy. The event that humans simply called the Turning had reshaped interstellar politics in ways no one could have predicted. On the rebuilt observation deck in New Geneva, Admiral Jackson stood alongside representatives from 7 different species, former victims of Vexeri expansion who had formed the Mutual Defense Accord with Earth. Through the transparent ceiling, they watched as the first human-built interstellar colony ship, the Alina Reyes, prepared for departure. "Your technology has advanced remarkably quickly," noted Ambassador Theolara, her translucent skin shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that indicated respect. Her species, the Laraxi, had been among the first to reach out to humans after the Vexeri collapse. "Necessity and inspiration," Jackson replied, watching engineers make final adjustments to the massive vessel. "We adapted what we learned from Harbinger's design and combined it with technology shared by your people." The Alina Reyes was humanity's first true generation ship, designed to carry 10,000 colonists to the Ta City system. Unlike the desperate warships built during the Vexeri invasion, this vessel represented hope and expansion, rather than last-ditch survival. "There are still Vexeri splinter groups causing trouble in the outer systems," rumbled Ambassador Thor, a massive reptilian whose people had suffered under Vexeri rule for centuries. "They refuse to accept that their dominion has ended, which is why our alliance remains vital," said Dr. Katori, now the head of Earth's interspecies scientific exchange. Age had not diminished her sharp mind, though her hands shook slightly as she manipulated the holographic display showing the ship's trajectory. "The most remarkable thing," said Theolara, her voice soft, "is that many of us had observed your planet for decades before the Vexeri arrived. We saw your wars, your environmental challenges, your divisions. Most believed your species would destroy itself before achieving interstellar capability." "We nearly did," Jackson admitted. "But there's something about humanity that the Vexeri never understood. Something I think Captain Rice embodied perfectly." "And what is that?" asked Cathor. "We are at our best when things are at their worst," Jackson said simply. "When pushed to the edge of extinction, humans don't break. They innovate, they sacrifice, they find strength they never knew they had." The conversation paused as a strange reading appeared on Dr. Katori's instruments. For just a moment, something had disturbed the fabric of space-time near the launch area. A familiar energy signature that shouldn't be possible. Her eyes met Jackson's, both thinking the same thing but neither willing to voice it. It wasn't the first time they detected that particular anomaly in the years since the Nexus fell. The sensors normalized almost immediately, but Katori saved the reading to her secure database, alongside dozens of similar incidents recorded near important human achievements over the past 5 years. "Is everything all right, Doctor?" Thilara asked, her skin shifting to patterns of concern. "Perfectly fine," Katori replied, closing the alert window. "Just a calibration issue." Later that night, after the diplomatic reception had ended and the Alina Reyes had departed on its historic journey, Katori met Jackson at their usual spot, a small memorial garden built where they had last seen Captain Reyes alive. "That's the 17th temporal anomaly this year," she said without preamble, handing him a data tablet. "Always near major human accomplishments, always with the same energy signature." Jackson studied the readings, his expression unreadable. "Still matches the Harbinger's phase drive exactly." "It's impossible," Katori said, but without conviction. After what they'd witnessed, impossible had lost much of its meaning. "We never did fully understand what happened when she combined the phase drive with the entropy cascade," Jackson pointed out. "Our best theories suggested a sort of dimensional pocket, a space outside normal time, where she might still exist in some form," Katori finished, "watching us, perhaps even guiding us." They stood in silence for a long moment, looking up at the stars that were no longer a barrier but a highway for human expansion. "Whether she's out there or not," Jackson finally said, "her legacy is clear. She showed the galaxy what one human could do when everything was on the line. And what humanity can become when we're united by a common purpose," Katori added. Above them, unnoticed by either, a single star flickered briefly, not a natural phenomenon, but a momentary glimpse of something passing through the dimensional veil. Something shaped like a predatory fish, sleek and obsidian black, watching over the species it had saved before slipping back into the space between spaces, continuing its eternal vigil. The legend of the Harbinger and its pilot lived on, not just in human hearts, but across the stars themselves. A reminder that sometimes the smallest ships leave the largest wakes.